Hello, welcome back to Casablanca. This is the 50th episode. Normally, for every 10th episode, I do a double review, but since it's the 50th episode, I decided I was going to do something a little different. And since the name of this podcast is Casablanca, I figured for the 50th, I would cover just one movie, and that will be Casablanca. Anyway, Casablanca is a 1942 drama directed by Michael Curtiz and starring Humphrey, Bogart, and Ingrid Bergman. You might notice I called it a drama. Something that's annoyed me about this movie for a long time is, growing up, I didn't see this movie until about 15 years ago. Growing up, I always heard this called one of the most romantic movies ever. It's such a romance. It's a romance. The romance in it's one of the greatest on-screen romances ever. It's such a romantic film, and it's a romance. And it's built up to be like this great romantic movie. And it's not a romantic movie. I consider it more to be like a war movie, like a non-action war movie, except for the flashback to Paris. For example, they don't actually, they don't get together in the movie. He basically hates her at one point. He basically hates her for most of the movie. He's like, I don't even want you here. Like, of all the gin joints in all the world, she came to mind. And, I know it's like what are the odds? Because we had the history in Paris, and that's when the Nazis invaded, and then they don't really even like each other until closer to the end. So like at one point, even close to the end, she literally points a gun at him. So yeah, I'm kind of hesitant on giving spoilers because it is readily available. It's on Max. And even though it came out like a long time ago, there's still a lot of people that haven't seen it, because I was asking a bunch of my friends. I'm like, oh, have you seen Casablanca? Get used to that. I'm probably going to accidentally say Casablanca. I did that when I was talking to my friends. I'm like, I'm going to review Casablanca. And they're like, you're reviewing your own podcast? I mean... So, if I say Casablanca, I mean Casablanca. Anyway, and I asked a bunch of my friends if they'd seen it. Most hadn't, a few had. So, it's like an average rating on there. I should do a poll from now on. I just ask random people. Like, does Facebook still do polls? They did that for a while. I haven't seen polls on there in a long time. Anyway, there's so much about this movie. Like, watching this movie now, like I said, I've seen it a bunch. I used to watch it annually, at least once a year, and this is the first time I've seen it in actually about a year. I saw it last year, and it feels like I hadn't seen it in years, but I did see it because I've lived in this house for 2 years, and I watched it here, so it had to have been last year. Anyway, I've watched it in the last 2 years, and then I watched it again now. Anyway, it's literally like 15 to 20 minutes into the movie before you even meet one of the main characters, like Rick or Ilsa. And the first one you meet is Rick. I think you see Elsa outside. They were like, the plane, the famous shot of the plane flying over Rick's cafe, and there's somebody she's standing next to someone who goes, tomorrow we're going to be on a plane like that, and I think that's Elsa. I couldn't quite tell, but I'm pretty sure it was. But we're not technically introduced to her. She could have just been like a random person on the street at that point in the movie. We didn't know it was someone important. But again, it's not a romantic film. The first 20 minutes sets up the story, where it takes place obviously during World War II. It came out in 1942, literally in the middle of World War II. And there are transit papers that there's two German officers, I believe. I should again, me with notes. I write very specific notes, but not about the important things. It's like, oh, here's a random note. And like this note is very random. That's a quote. I wrote a quote down. I don't do that very often. Anyway, there are transit papers that were taken off of two German guards who were murdered. And that is what the story revolves around. This guy runs up to Rick and says, "Hey, I have these papers and I need you to hide them." And Rick's like, some transit paper was stolen off of two dead German guards. And the guy's like, "Oh, that's very coincidental." And then Rick was like, he had said, like, "I don't stick my neck out for no one." But he takes the papers, hides them in his jacket. And that's what the film revolves around. The plot of that is they're trying to find these papers because they know they're out there somewhere, and they got to keep. Victor Laszlo is one of the characters, and Victor Laszlo is Ilsa's husband, and so the Germans want to keep him there because he's a freedom fighter. And they don't want him to leave because then he will go and like lead more people into like revolting against them. Again, this came out in the middle of all that. It's not a historical piece. It was news. It was current events when this came out. The film shows that the officials in Casablanca are corrupt. And the film it's a funny movie. Like, people often forget that this film does have a lot of humor in it. Like, there's a scene where I forgot what they're offering. The reason, like, they're wanting, like, Rick's like, "Oh, I'll do it for $20,000," and then the main cop, whose name Louis, I believe, but his last name, he's known by his last name for the whole movie. He says, "10,000. I am only a poor corrupt official." That's the line I wrote, the quote. And it's funny, but it comes back later when like they were told to shut down Rick's cafe. Because, actually, you know what? Before I get that, the reason they wanted it to shut down, I'm just all over the place. See, I do not plan ahead. I am all over the place. And I'll finish the corrupt line first. When they shut the cafe down, and he's like, "Well, I have no reason to shut this place down. They haven't done anything." The German officer's like, "Well, find a reason." And then the officer's like, "This place is being shut down." Rick's like, "What's the meaning of this?" He's like, "I am shocked, I tell you, to find that there's gambling going on." And then someone walks up, "Oh, you're winning, sir." "Oh, thank you." It's like, there's humor in here. I love the humor in here. And like, he asked Rick earlier in the film, like, "Why did you come here to Casablanca?" And Rick says, "For my health. I came here for the waters. I hear they have healing powers," or something. And then the officer's like, "What waters? We're in the desert." And Rick goes, "I was misinformed." So there's plenty of humor in this movie, but also plenty of drama. There's a scene I always thought was kind of haunting, and when I learned the story behind it, it became even more haunting. There's a scene where Strasser, who is the main German official in the movie, he's basically one of like the antagonists of the film. He has the German people in the cafe singing a German anthem, not their national anthem, just a German anthem. I looked it up. I looked both songs up, it says that, I forgot, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the names of the songs because it's in German and in French. The German one was a German anthem, and then Victor Laszlo, the freedom fighter, has the orchestra and the rest of the cafe sing the French national anthem. And so like you got the French people singing the French song, the German people singing the German song. And what's amazing about this film, and the reason that scene is so haunting, even if you don't know the backstory of it, is the film was shot entirely in America on a soundstage at Warner Brothers. But they hired extras who were actual refugees. So like it wasn't just random actors off the street. Like this story was personal to them. And so in that scene, like the scene itself was planned. Like it was in the script. Like they were going to do that scene, but because again, this wasn't a period piece. This was current events. This was what they're going through. In that scene, you see everybody singing like very passionately, and there's like tears in their faces, and they're like singing with like pride, and those people were not acting in that scene. And it was like in the context, it's like that was a very, very powerful moment. And that's what leads to the German officials saying, shut this place down, because that wasn't supposed to happen. I'm just kind of all over the place. I want to talk about what people say is a Mandela effect in this movie. There's a scene early in the film when Ilsa walks up to Sam. He was playing the piano, and what everyone remembers is she says, "Play it again, Sam." And some people say it was later on in the film when Rick has him play it, and then he says, "Play it again, Sam." But that's not what is said by either of them. Ilsa says, "Play it once, Sam, for old time's sake." He says, "I don't know what you mean, Miss Ilsa." She says, "Play it, Sam. Play as time goes by." "Oh, I don't remember it, Miss Ilsa. I'm a little rusty on it. I'll hum it for you." And then she hums it. "Sing it, Sam." And then later, like Rick comes in and is like, "I told you never to play it." And then he sees her and is like, "Oh no, it's her." And then later, and after the cafe's closed, it's just him and Sam in the dark with the light of the lighthouse shining in. "You know what I want to hear." "No, I don't." "You played it for her, you can play it for me." "Well, I don't think I remember. If she can stand it, I can. Play it." And then he plays it. And yeah, at no point in that does either of them say, "Play it again, Sam." It's just a small detail, but I think it's interesting that it's like something like that. It's kind of like the "Luke, I am your father." Everyone says that. But he says, "No, I am your father." But what I think is funny is, you know how, I was reading the quotes, the dialogue between Ilsa, Sam, and then Sam and Rick. Both times, Sam's like, "Oh, I don't want to play that," because he knows like the history of it and what the song means, and he knows that it'll hurt both of them, and he's just like, "I don't want to get involved. I don't want to hurt both of you or either of you." Later in the film, both Rick and Ilsa walk into the cafe and pass Sam, and Rick says, "Play as time goes by." No argument. He just plays it. And I love that. The third time, he doesn't even argue. He's like, "Okay, just plays a song." But, when you think about it, the first time they were by themselves, like Ilsa was by herself, and the second time Rick was by himself. The third time they were together. So that might have been the difference. And I'm thinking, like, the first two times, like, he'd been so long, like, that's just like that's like a big no-no. Like, we don't play that song here. In fact, based on how Rick responded, he literally says, "I thought I told you never to play that." So like, he's got it in his head. That's not a song you play, and so he's trying to like, he has to fight the urge to not play. Like, no, that's not a song. He's fighting back, but like, because he's played it twice, he's kind of broken that stigma in his head. So like, he's asked to play. He's like, okay, he just plays it. I think that's kind of interesting. Like look into it's like, I'd actually never noticed that part until this watch, because I've seen it so many times over the years, and I've never noticed the third time he plays it until this time. And I love movies that can do that. Like, you watch it a bunch of times and still find out stuff and analyze it and like get deeper meanings in it. And that's fun to me. Also, speaking of As Time Goes By, I love that this song was so important to Warner Brothers that they have a variation of As Time Goes By as their fanfare. I also want to talk really quick about the composer of the film. He did the music, Max Steiner. And the name sounded familiar. Like, every time I see the movie, it says, music by Max Steiner. And I'm like, that sounds familiar. Cool. And I found out this time why. Because, and he did a bunch of movies, a bunch of scores of movies between the 40s and 60s, 30s and 60s, and most of them I'd never heard of, but there's 4, including Casablanca. There's 4 movies that stood out. The other 3 were King Kong, the original 1937 version of A Star Is Born, and Gone with the Wind. So, yeah, that's why his name sounded familiar, and why the music also kind of sounds familiar. Well, it's kind of funny, like, the way that a film is shot changes the way you see it, and, like, place it in time. You think because, like, Gone with the Wind is full color, and it's in HD. Well, I mean, now it is. I don't know if, like, obviously it wasn't shot in HD. They didn't have that. I had it on Actually, I think I bought it on Blu-ray like 10 years ago, and it was like so clear, like crystal clear, like a brand new movie. And I have it again. I haven't watched it since I bought it, but it did look like a brand new movie. It's so crystal clear. The colors are vibrant, and it was amazing. And you think Casablanca, and it's like very black and white. Some of it has like a foggy quality to it. Even I had the Blu-ray of that, even in HD, that had kind of a intentionally blurry, foggy look to it, because it's like, I don't know if it's like the way it was shot, or if it's kind of like Scream 4, where they like put like Vaseline on the lens to make it look a certain way. It feels like an intentional effect that they wanted to give it. But even in HD, it still had that really old black and white movie feel to it, which I'm glad, because like Casablanca is like the classic old black and white movie. If they made it like crystal clear black and white, it'd be like, kind of loses the charm. But the reason I pointed that out is it feels like Casablanca is much older than Gone with the Wind, but Gone with the Wind is older by like 4 years. So, yeah. Well, 1939, Gone with the Wind, and this is 1942, but I think Gone with the Wind took a while to shoot. I don't remember. So, a little fun fact about Gone with the Wind, speaking of which, while I'm here. It was directed by Victor Fleming, and the film came out in 1939, And he's best known for directing two of the greatest films of all time, was Gone with the Wind, which came out in 1939, and The Wizard of Oz, which also came out in 1939. So he did two of the greatest films ever made the same year. Yeah, that is crazy. That's a very busy year for him. I don't know if he shot them like back to back or at the same time, like running from film set to film set. But that is kind of interesting. And there is a connection to this movie, obviously, because the guy that did the music for Gone with the Wind did the music for this. So there's that. But yeah, like a random subject jump is this movie is very highly quotable. Like, I always think, oh yeah, there's a couple of lines in this. There's a, here's looking at you, kid, and this looks like the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and the, like, of all the bars and taverns and whatever, she walks into mine, and I don't remember off the top of my head, like, that one. And so I'm thinking, oh yeah, there's a few. Play it, Sam. But then as I'm going through, I'm like, oh yeah, that's in this movie. And there's like every 5 minutes, it's like, oh, that line's in this movie. And it's like so many quotes. And it's crazy. But yeah, like this film, I could probably go on for like an hour. I did do a lot of research for this. I didn't, as is the usual for me, I didn't take as many notes as I should have. I took some notes, and so like I don't remember everything. But this film, I consider it to be one of the most misunderstood films, because one of the videos I watched was from Warner Brothers themselves, talking about, it was a behind the scenes documentary about the making of Gone with the Wind, and they interviewed like Steven Spielberg and a bunch of people, and they were even calling it one of the greatest romantic movies of all time. And it's like, I consider the romance part to be a subplot, because there's more going on here. It's kind of like in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. If you read the book is all about Voldemort's past, and Harry and Dumbledore, they get the memories to use the pensieve to look back at like different parts of Voldemort's life, and that's what it's about. Finding out his backstory, to find out what he's planning, to find out about the Horcruxes. What is the movie about? Relationships. There's one scene where they go to his past to look at Voldemort's past, and it wasn't even one of the important ones. That's kind of what people like. That's kind of what people take out of Casablanca. Like, so much is going on, so much historical context going on in this movie. All people want to talk about is the romance. Real quick before I stop talking about this movie, is something I didn't know until I had heard of this, but I didn't know much about it until now. It was based on a play. The reason I looked into this is I noticed this time it says based on the play by da da da, and I literally was like, play? And so afterwards I looked at it. There was an unproduced play. Somebody had written a play, but it never got put in. It was never produced. Like, they never actually put on the play. They basically bought the screenplay. They bought it and turned it into the movie. They turned the script for the play into a new screenplay to turn into a movie. It's called Everybody Comes to Rick's. And the story was a bit different. I kind of like read through, not the script, but the Wikipedia. It's like the skeleton of what became Casablanca was in Everybody Comes to Rick's, and they the movie is basically based on the play, not direct. It's not a direct adaptation. However, it was unproduced, but in 1991, it was actually put on as a play, and I'm not sure how that went, because it's not really saying. I think it was like limited run. It might not have been that good, because I'm not seeing much. It ran for 6 weeks. There we go. That's all it says. But anyway, yeah, that was kind of a little interesting fun fact. So, I'm going to end the part of the episode about Casablanca right there. But I do have other stuff to talk about here. For starters, this is episode 50, like I said. And last year, I ended season 1 at the Christmas episode. And when I started back up, it was, this is season 2. We're in the season 2 right now. And I decided that this will be the end of season 2. And then the Casablanca is going to go on hiatus until sometime in the middle of 2024. And then season 3. And I already have ideas for what I'm going to do. I'm going to change things up again with this season. Yeah, with this season, I was like, I'm going to start talking about TV shows as well. And I talked about 2 shows. So, I didn't even finish it, because I talked about season 1 of Road to Avonlea. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do multiple parts of that. And then I didn't. So I decided to do full shows, like not just like season by season. I thought that would be a good idea to space it out, more content. But then I realized that's kind of hard to do, because I don't typically see shows as seasons. I see them as a whole. So it's kind of hard to talk about a specific season. And I didn't think about that before I did that episode. So yeah, I decided after that, I'm just going to do a full series as a whole for an episode, not season 1, season 2, whatever. And I already have an idea of how to change things up again for season 3, but I'm not going to talk about any of that. I'm going to wait, because I had that idea back in September, and that's even changed since then. And I know by the time season 3 comes around, it'll probably change 5 or 6 more times. So I don't want to promise something and be like, actually, I know I said this, but I'm going to do that. Alright, I'm going to end the episode right here. This is the end of season 2. Here's looking at you, kid.